Hello everyone, welcome to this webinar in which we are going to talk about how to crack the top 25 B school even with a low GMAT score. I know a lot of you might be done with your GMAT and must have started your application for the round two, most of the deadlines now, which are in Jan. And you must be evaluating which schools can you target, which schools you cannot. I'll be more than happy to talk about, if you have any specific questions around it. So feel free to post your doubts, your queries in the chat box. While I go ahead and talk about what's the agenda today. Uh, so we'll start off very quickly by talking about who we are. It's just going to take 20 to 30 seconds, and then we are going to move into talking about, what are the important factors that, you need to consider to figure out whether you can still crack the top 25 P school with a low GMAT score or not. Uh, Once you take into account these factors, and I'm talking about the four most important ones, you would have a very clear-cut idea which schools you can target and how you can get into those. And once you have evaluated those factors, I'll just talk a little bit about what kind of metrics that you can use while shortlisting schools. I know there are certain ways in which most of the aspirants choose schools which is slightly incorrect, and just choosing schools based on ranking is also, in my opinion, not 100% foolproof. So definitely, I would want to touch upon that aspect. And finally, a little bit, I'm going to talk about whether going to a T15 to T25 P school, how much is it worth it or not? Because this is one common question which I always get. Hey, should I go to a school which is like ranked T25 or T30? So I think it's worth talking about it a little bit. Uh, so let's get started. Let me very quickly introduce myself. My name is Saquib. I am currently, one vice student at Kellogg, and I'm also the co-founder of GMAT and GMATWhiz. I have taken the GMAT myself. I have a 760 on it, and apart from providing GMAT and GRE services, we also help students get into top B schools. So if you are interested in working with me, if you're evaluating the schools to go to, and or if you're looking to get some help in your applications, feel free to kind of get in touch with us. I'm sharing the link of our webpage. I'll go through it once the webinar is over, and let us know if you have any questions. So with this, let's get started. Let's talk about what are the four important factors that I would consider while deciding if I have a low GMAT score, whether I can crack 25 B schools or not. Keep the first thing that I would like to I would want you all to ask yourself is how low is your GMAT score. Okay, and low out here is, understand, a very relative term. What I mean by that is, let's say, and top 25 is pretty broad, right? So let's say if you're targeting an M7 school or a T10 school, um, a 720 or 710 might be a low score, right? But if you're targeting, say, a T25 or a T30B school, 710 might be perfect. So first of all, you need to kind of figure out the kind of schools that you're looking at. Uh, with respect to that, how low is your score? Okay, and a lot of it also depends, by the way, on the region. That is why, in fact, let me bring all the four factors, because ideally you should not look at these parameters in silos. Okay, so the reason I'm saying that, evaluate your GMAT score based on the kind of school that you're looking at and the region, because in my opinion, both of these two factors out here play a pretty decent role. What I mean by that is, let's say, for example, you are from India, and you're targeting, as I said, a T10 B school or a T15 B school. The GMAT score usually that is shown on any B school web page. Let's say, for example, if you see Cornell stating 710, say for example, or 720 is the average GMAT score. To be on the safer side, you need to add 10, 20 points to that to kind of figure out whether the score that you have is a safe score or not, or whether you can even take a risk or not at 720. So But if you say we belong to, I know that the average GMAT score for people, let's say, for example, from regions in Africa, have a pretty lower GMAT, can still get into a decent B school with a low GMAT score. So even if the average is like say 710, and if you have a 650, it is quite possible that even though the 650 is relatively a lower GMAT score, it would be enough for you, to evaluate a lot of these schools in the T25 region. Okay, so one obviously best way to crack at a T25 school with the GMAT score is to kind of evaluate these two things pretty quickly and set up the right expectations. Like if you're looking at M7, and if you have a GMAT score of 710, and there are none of these schools which take at 710, doesn't make sense, right? However, as I said, there are two more factors which you should keep in mind before completely discarding the idea of, hey, the average score is 710 of this B school, I just have a 710, so I have no chance. Don't think of it in that way. Okay. Also, try and see what kind of profile you have, and the school that you're looking at, whether it's a right fit for you or not. This is something which I do talk a lot about in my previous webinars. Definitely go and take a look at it, because just deciding blindly that you would want to go to a business school just because it is in the top 5 or 10 doesn't make sense. There could be a school which might be a T20B school, and which might be like a perfect fit for you, depending on what the school has to offer and what you want. And I'm going to elaborate on that. I know I'm saying it very superficially, but believe me, I'm going to touch upon the fit part a little bit more. But profile is also very, very, very important. It is, and when you're evaluating a profile, um, there are certain factors that you need to consider. Say, for example, try and see, these 3 to 4 factors, and then take a call when you're looking at profile and fit. So, for example, it's quite possible that maybe you would want to, do, say, for example, you want to go into finance, okay? And so one option may be like, for example, you could go to Stern, but let's say if you have a low GMAT score, like say 710, then Stern would not make sense for you because Stern average GMAT score is quite high. So you would not be able to crack it. So you'll have to see which school would make sense, which is a lower ranked school, but still, has a good finance curriculum or courses or finance opportunities. Or if you're looking at, say, for example, tech, let's say you could even go to, with a low GMAT score, you might end up at a UCLA, but you could also maybe go to a Foster or a Kelly, which might be possible. I'd say, for example, a 680 or a 700 also. So sometimes a low GMAT score is not, it doesn't mean that you cannot go into a B school. Uh, the only thing that might happen is that you might have to choose a school which is maybe within the range of 25 to 30 or 2015 to 25, but their primary focus is exactly what you want to do. That's why I said look at your goals and see whether that school provides has that kind of a goal or not. And I'm going to give a few examples in the later slides. If you have any questions at this point of time, please let me know. Feel free to ask questions and any doubts regarding these things. If you have already taken your GMAT and if your score is on the lower end, if you have any doubts around it, once again, feel free to post it in the chat box. I'll be more than happy to, take this up. But as far as profile is concerned, look at, it's quite possible that you might have an exceptional leadership skills, you might have an exceptional international exposure. So, for example, you might have worked for a long time across different countries. You could have even an unusual career path. If I take the example of Asia or India, a lot of most of the people have done, kind of engineering, then they end up with being in IT and those kind of stuff, which is a lot of people are doing that. But if you have a completely different profile, like if you have not done engineering, maybe you might have done statistics, or you might have a degree in economics. You might have, say, for example, you might have not worked for an IT firm, but maybe you started something of your own. You might have raised funding, sold a company, um, anything which is not, anything which is like off the beaten path, something which you don't see on a day-to-day basis, could actually give you an edge, because a lot of these schools do look for a difference in, uh, they want to bring in diversity. Okay, so if they want to bring in diversity and if they see that hey, your profile is slightly different, then they would be more than willing to interview, even if you have a slightly low GMAT score compared to what that school is looking for. Okay, so evaluate these factors really, really well, and based on that, take a call. So just to summarize here, try and say, look at the GMAT score of the school that you're looking at, and even if your GMAT score, say for example, is lower than their average GMAT score, let's say if it's 710 and you are at 680, don't just discard it completely, saying that I would not be able to get into this school. Ask yourself, if you have anything different to offer in terms of either career path or in terms of your experiences, which might be very rich in terms of working with diverse people, international exposure, and leading multiple teams. Okay, I hope this makes sense. I can see a question which is the University of Arizona good? The University of Arizona, if you're talking about WP Carey, yes, it's a pretty decent school. If you're looking, say, for example, to especially if you want to do operations, supply chain, all of that, they have a very solid curriculum. For the rest of the again, it depends on what you want to do, right? It would depend on your goals. So, for example, if you are looking at something else, like for example maybe finance, it's not very strong for finance but it's pretty decent. They have a decent placement in tech. They do offer a decent amount of scholarship, by the way. So if your priority, if your goal is to go to a place where you end up getting good amount of scholarship, considering the WP career would definitely be something that you can keep in mind. So, good and bad again for Hanford is a relative term. So, if it aligns with your goal, with the way I'm talking about operations, supply chain, maybe tech, if you want to, and if you're looking for a decent scholarship, definitely would make sense. Okay, I hope that answers the query. So, with this, let's talk a little bit about, goal fit in terms of, I know I've talked about tech, I've talked about finance. I just want to talk a little bit about how do you decide whether, a school makes sense or not. Now, I know everybody in some way or the other, when they start their GMAT prep, when they start looking at schools, they really want to go to the top B schools, and there's no harm in it. But let's just say after taking the GMAT, now round two is closed, you might not be able to take your GMAT again. You start evaluating whether what you want to do. And I've seen people, say for example, if you want to do tech and let's say for example work for Amazon, let's say that's your basic goal, or Adobe or something like that. A good question that you need to ask yourself is, do I really need a what on a booth tag to go into Adobe or Amazon? Obviously, that tag is a lifetime tag. And if that tag really matters to you, then obviously you should not be looking at a low GMAT score. You need to work hard to get a higher GMAT score. Or, as I said, awesome profile, then this might work. But if your goal is simply to go to a tech firm such as Amazon, Adobe, and these kind of places, then definitely try and explore schools which might be like a T15 school, like with a 720, 730, it's quite possible, or maybe even with a decent profile, with a good profile in a 700, 1020, you might end up getting into UCLA or TEP, or you might even end up getting into Foster, which I do talk about it a lot, that people discard Foster as a school, but being in Seattle, in the right location where all the tech firms are there, a lot of startup, good tech, ecosystem is there. So if your goal is to work for, say, for example, some growth stage tech startup, you really need to go to Wharton Go to do that. You really need to, do you really want to work again on your GMAT score? So just adding here that, again, re-emphasizing on the fact that ask yourself what your main goal is. If tag is your main goal, then obviously evaluate whether your profile would be enough to get into that B school. But if it isn't, and you're okay just focusing on the end goal, and if some other B school like these would be able to get it, then even with a low GMAT score, you would be able to hit that target. Like for example, one of our students, like Chinmay, had if I remember correctly, 690 or 680, but less than 700 is what I remember. And her goal was pretty clear. She wanted to go into tech. She wanted a PM role. So once we had that clear, that is what she wanted, we kind of applied to schools which aligned with her goal. And the good part about it is understand is sometimes with that kind of, if your goal is pretty clear And if you apply to the right kind of B schools in those range, you might even end up getting a scholarship, which she did. She ended up getting a 60K scholarship. In fact, both these B schools ended up giving her 50% scholarship. So if you choose the right school, which is the right fit for you also, then they would also want to take you. Okay, and in that case, they would be willing to offer you scholarships also. So, one of the most important tips that I would want to give out here is spend a lot of time in researching school, or talking to us, and we'll be more than happy to help you figure out which school would be the best fit for you. Uh, uh, Having said that, I'm very quickly sharing the our Calendly link. Feel free to book a call with us, and we would would be more than happy to help you out, figure out which school would make sense. And obviously, if you want to work with me with your applications, I'll be more than happy to do that. I've also mentioned a few schools out here, like for example, WP Carey was mentioned. I talked about schools which is a very solid school that you would want to go to. Um, let's say you really want to go this year only, then Purdue Cats also are schools which are slightly closer to a T30 range, but they are if you end up getting 100% scholarship or 80% scholarship, might be worth considering instead of again waiting for a year, especially if your goal is just going to tech. Okay. Now, coming to sure, Mr. I'll do that. Unfortunately, there are not a lot of Indian B schools. We just have an ISB and ABC. Um, at a low GMAT score, let me very quickly touch out here as Mr. is asking about Indian B schools. Um, See, the underlying principle, as far as whether it's a Indian B school, European B school, or US B school, would still remain the same. Okay, like what do you really want to do? Start from there, and post that, ask yourself how would the particular school that you're looking at, would they be able to help you achieve that goal? Like if you want to work in a say for a consulting firm, say for example, would say for example doing an MBA from SPJN or Excel, and I'm talking about the 1 year program, not the flagship 2 year program. Would that be able to help you get that? And in most of the cases, the answer might be no. That it would be pretty difficult. Okay, so in that case, you would have to look at the most. There, I would say there are 3 to 4 top B schools, which are like ISB and ABC, as I mentioned. Sometimes you may want to look at L if you really want to, or Great Lakes if you really want to look at those schools. But that would be like you if you really need to go this year. And even if your profile is good, by the way, there have been cases where people have ended up getting a convert from ISP. Like in our case, we had somebody last year converting the 690, 680 on ISP. So if you have that kind of a score, even you can get into ISP if your profile, as I said, profile works, and if you have the story which makes the sense, if you show that you're a right fit. For A and B, I've seen usually ABC, especially for A and C, having a score closer to 700, 710 is better, just to be on the safer side. But you can still take a risk if your profile is solid, and you can try it at 680, 690. But usually the chances of getting a call would be on the lower end. I'll be very honest here. But I will still considers if your profile is pretty good, okay, and if your score is low. I hope that answers your query, Shamishka. Uh, just coming to another one final quick example would be, we talked about tech, I've talked about a little bit of finance and consulting now. There are niche things also. Like recently, I've been working with a lot of people who want to, work for energy, net zero, and all of that. Um, and ideally, whenever people think about it, everybody wants to, go to a M7B school. Like, for example, Kellogg is pretty well known for energy. They are pretty well known for healthcare if you want to go into healthcare. Um, Everyone blindly thinks, oh, I want to work for an energy firm. I want to, work on sustainability. I would want to go to an M7050. But if you have a low GMAT score, then I would definitely recommend schools like McCombs and Rice Jones. If you have, let's say, for example, 680, 690, and you would really want to work in energy. Because being in Texas, these schools are at the right region. Again, location does become an important part. As I was talking about Foster, Seattle, or NYU Stern Finance, New York. In the same way, Energy, Texas definitely makes sense. So keep the location also in mind while choosing the school, because where would you want to work, whether that those kind of work are available in those regions or not is something that you can ask yourself. Okay. There are obviously, if your score is closer to 7, 10, 20, then you can obviously look at Haas and Fuka. But since we're talking about schools with low GMAT score, definitely Mekong and Raichung would make sense. And that is what, just two examples. One of them in T25B school would be Rais Jones, which she converted at 700, ended up getting a scholarship. I'm pretty sure if she would have applied at 680, also she would have ended up getting a call and a convert. Maybe not a scholarship at 680, but she would have got it. The reason is she had a profile. Alfie had a profile in the energy sector. She had a good alignment, a really solid fit. We could create a good story around it, why it would make sense. Rais Jones or Mekong and all this could make sense for her. So I cannot emphasize more on the fact that if you choose the school which makes the right sense for you, then the chances of conversion increases a lot. So don't just blindly choose a T20, any T25 school and apply just based on the average GMAT score. That's the point that I want to put across. And but there is another example of European B school like in CRT completed at 700, which is in fact for Indian people it's still a little difficult. But she ended up doing that because we were able to show how her experiences were exceptional, and it was easy for her to portray the fact that she would be an asset, and there are things that she would be able to learn. So one thing which I would also like to mention is that there are a lot of schools that kind of are specialized, which might take at a low GMAT score, and you might think, hey, if there's a low GMAT score, then these schools are not good. But that is not the case. Like I've already talked about, Scheller, which is Georgia Tech, which you can get into if you have a score of, somewhere between 660 to 700. Also, if you're focused on tech and PM roles, definitely try out those schools. If you're looking at entrepreneurship, in fact, Kelly is also pretty good for marketing also. So if you're looking at marketing, product marketing, definitely try and look at these schools because these would be easier to crack. Um, MBA is good for consulting, MBA is good for finance. If you're, say, for example, not able to get into NYU Stern, then look at maybe, and you still want to go with a low GMAT score, look at Emory with a 640, 670. We would still be able to convert that. In fact, that is what we did for one of our cases, which was like Shrinkla. She had some background in entrepreneurship, wanted to go into entrepreneurship, and she had a GMAT 630 only, which is a low GMAT score, right? But since we knew that her story was good, she had some background in it. It was very easy to kind of. Again, I'm using the word easy. It's not that easy, but when I say easy, the thing that makes it easy is that if as I said, if your story and goals align, then we can still work on figuring out the best way to portray yourself or present yourself in the university and why you would be a good fit for the school. Okay. If you have any questions, guys, again, I know I've been doing a monologue for some time, but any questions, any doubts at this point of time, please ask. Again, summarizing a few points here, key points is, I'm sure from here that you must have understood that the main reason people are still able to crack any top 25B school with a low GMAT score is when they try and apply to schools where their profile aligns with what the school is looking for. This is the key, I would say, from this whole thing that you need to take away. This is the major takeaway from our discussion, that don't blindly just keep on choosing school. Okay, I'll apply to T10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Don't do that. It is quite possible that a T25B school or a T30B school could be a very, very good fit for you, and you would be able to achieve your goal that you're looking for. If you're not sure, do your research. Again, if you're not sure whether you want to, and if you're running out of time, because I know we just have around 4 weeks now, book a call, talk to us, and we would be more than happy to help you figure out, what makes sense, and we can help you with your applications too. So one last point which I want to mention is where you're talking about whether a T25B school, whether ranking matters or not, or whether it is worth going to a T25B school or not. The way I would put it is, see, understand if as I said, if it aligns with your goal, definitely go. Other thing is that if you end up getting a scholarship, like if you look at some of the cases that I've mentioned out here, Like if you look at Chinmay, we already talked about Alfie ended up getting a scholarship for Iceland. Shifali ended up going to Owen with scholarship. Shrinkla had a Babson. She even converted herself in Germany with scholarship. So if you end up getting a scholarship, let's say for example a 50% scholarship or something like that, then the ROI actually increases a lot. Though again, don't read these in silos. What I mean by that is don't just say, hey, scholarship is the only important thing, so I'll end up going to a T50 B school. Don't do that. Uh, Add priority, like kind of prioritize what are the things which are important. Like in my opinion, fit should be the first priority. Number two would be if you end up getting a scholarship worth going. In my opinion, any T30 B school, if you go to, if you're finding a B school which for where you feel that you would be a right fit, definitely go. And if you end up getting a scholarship, then it's a no-brainer. Like you should just go and do your MBA without any problems. Because with a full scholarship, like I might end up getting a full scholarship from UNC kind of like the T20B school. So if you're studying for free from a T20B school, why would you worry about it, right? So long story short, just to summarize again, any T50 to T25B school is definitely worth it. Even till T30, I recommend people to go to. That is definitely not a problem, especially if you're getting a scholarship. Um, it might require a little bit of research on which schools would make sense and which school would not. That is something I would say, like, for example, if you're starting an application at this point of time, do a little bit of research. Also, I know these brand names are a long-term thing, and this is something which I'm saying which is slightly contradictory based on what the webinar is based on. But if brand matters to you a lot, you're like, no, I don't care much. I would need a brand only. Then in that case, obviously, if you don't have a very stellar profile, then maybe taking some time out and working on a profile and your GMAT score, then only in that case would it make sense. Otherwise, it is definitely possible with a 670, 680, or just a 700 to end up at least getting one convert if your profile is decent and if you're choosing the right B school. Like for example, Emma did not even go to Yale. He could have gone to Yale, but for him, brand wasn't important. Even though he converted that, for him it was pretty clear that if I'm getting a T25 B school and full scholarship, I would go. So that is why he prioritized him into convert. Okay. So these are some of the certain points which I wanted to put across, guys. If you have any questions, any doubts, feel free to ask. That kind of is from my end. Um, Also, one last point which I would add. So, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm there for another 5 minutes. But there's one more important point which I would like to add here is that sometimes, if say for example, in your mock you have been getting a decent score, and you end up getting a 680, and let's say for example, you have the potential of getting 700, 720, something like that. Then what you can even do is apply in this particular round, and then retake your GMAT after the application and submit your updated score, because there is still some lag between when you apply and when you get an interview, because there is still some gap between that 2 to 3 weeks, 4 weeks. So if you're confident that, oh, I ended up getting a 680, but I know I can have the potential to get a 720, then the other thing that you can do is simply apply and then take a call. Whether you want to retake the GMAT, retake it. If you get the score that you're looking for, you can submit it and then also get an interview call. That's something that we have tried in the past and it has worked for us. Okay, I can see a question in the chat box. I have a low GMAT score 670, female bachelor's in architecture, and I have 3 years of work experience as one of the directors. Is there any point applying to T10B school? If you're talking about a T10B, like US top 10B school with a 670, would be difficult, honestly, because see, understanding this way that HSW, and I'm assuming you're from India, right? So if you're from India with a 670, almost, I would say all USB schools would be out. With a 670, with 3 years of work experience, though the good part is your bachelor's in architecture, which is the only, I would say, slightly a thing that would be to your advantage. They do prefer diversity also, so being a female would also add some, some brownie points. But you need to hit that, at least a little higher GMAT. So like even if you hit a 700, 710, then maybe you can think of one or two schools, as dream schools and apply it in the T10B school. Otherwise, if you're a 670, then I would kind of look at somewhere between the range of, T20 to T30 only mostly, and maybe just apply one or two dream schools in between T15 to T20. If you want to take a shot, you can definitely do that. But T15 would be very, very difficult with a 670. Obviously, if you have something exceptional, we can have a discussion on that, and I can try and understand in those three years what else have you done. Sometimes those would give an indication whether you have the potential to go into a T10B school or not. And if GMAT is the only thing that is stopping you, we usually recommend to hit your GMAT score instead of compromising. So you can book a call with us, and then we can discuss more about it. But yeah, just on what information that you have given, T15 would be difficult, honestly. I hope that answers your query. If you still have any follow-up questions, any doubts, please ask. And by the way, guys, you might have questions later on also. You can see the phone number on the screen. You have the email ID. I've already shared the link. If later on, if you're still taking your GMAT, I know some of you might still be taking it. There are a few GMATWhiz students who are still taking the GMAT also, so I'm aware of that. So maybe after a week, if you're done with the GMAT, and then if you want to talk about what is possible, that's totally fine. To book a call after a week or 10 days. But I think after two weeks, beyond that, don't delay too much. Make sure that you start your application, because sometimes, if you delay too much with on improving a GMAT score, and if you don't give the right amount of time in the application, then that will also backfire. At least keep 3 weeks bare minimum for the applications, if you're applying to at least 2 schools or something like that. Okay, so I don't see any more questions in the chat box, so I'm ending the session now. I hope this was informative, guys. And as I said, if you have any questions, feel free to write to us. Oh, I can see a question in the chat box. Is it good to go for MBA without work experience? I would say no. Honestly, get some work experience. Unless until you're looking at MIM programs, others, then only you can. Or if you're looking for MBA in India, like in India, you can still get into an MBA, but that would be through CAT, not GMAT. If you want to get through GMAT, then you can try not MBA but MIM program, Master in Management program, which there are a lot of schools in Europe which you can take a look at. But my recommendation would be, if you're thinking long term, work for some time, for 2 to 3 years, and then apply for B schools, apply to B schools. Okay, so I'm ending the session now. Have a great day, good night, and once again, feel free to get in touch with us if you have any questions.